The mid-size sedan is an endangered species, kicked to the curb by the SUV. But if SUVs are not your thing, then there are still some sedans worth considering, and the Mazda 6 just might be the best of them. Welcome to Four Wheels and a Seat. I'm Alex Dalrymple, and this is my channel where I review new cars every week. Make sure you don't miss one. Please hit subscribe, the notification bell, and give me a like if you enjoy the video. The Mazda 6 is in its 11th year in its current form, and I liked it so much when it was released, we ended up getting one as our family car. But that was nearly 10 years ago, and the Mazda 6 has not changed that much in all that time, which is both a good and bad thing. For starters, it's still a really good looking car, certainly more interesting to look at than a Toyota Camry. Mazda's design language has evolved a little bit since this car was released, so it is a little bit of a throwback, but up the front here the car has had a bit of a nip and tuck around the front headlights, and this top spec Atenza model gets a slightly more blingy front grille. From the side you can see this car's classic Coke bottle shape with swooping down lines, and this Atenza model gets larger 19-inch alloy wheels as well as a sunroof. And you can also see that this is a proper sedan. It's not a sedan masquerading as a coupe or a hatch. It actually has a flat boot at the back. When you're behind a Mazda 6 in traffic, it is easy to confuse it at a glance for a Mazda 3 because the cars are both about the same width. So it's not a very wide car, really. One way to tell them apart, though, is the chrome strip that the Mazda 6 gets. The boot is good size too, at 474 litres. The Mazda 6 is powered by a 2.5 litre four-cylinder turbocharged engine that outputs 173 kilowatts of power and 420 newton meters of torque. Fuel economy clocks in at 7.6 litres per 100 kilometres on a combined cycle power, driven to the front wheels only via a 6-speed automatic transmission. The interior of the Mazda 6 is largely similar to how it was after its second series update, where they took the center console screen out of the middle of the dash and put it resting up on top. Other than that, everything else is pretty similar. Here in the Atenza, we get some very nice soft touch material here across the belt line and wood inserts up here on top, plus lots of soft touch and stitching throughout the cabin. It feels quite premium. The center console screen is actually really the only thing that lets this cabin down. At 8 inches, it is really quite small for a car this size, and the software on it is ancient. I mean, it dates back to when this car was first launched, so it's now over a decade old, and despite the inclusion of wireless Apple CarPlay, not much has changed in it, and it's kind of old and clunky. The native navigation is not very good. I'd stick with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. You will need a USB cable if you use Android Auto, by the way. It's connected to an 11-speaker Bose sound system, and on the upside, that sounds really good. Moving down to the climate controls, they are run completely separately from the center console screen, which is something that I actually really like. They're pretty straightforward, easy to use. Wireless phone charging is something that this car has that my one didn't. It's really nice to have, and I do have to say that this car does a better job of charging my phone than pretty much any other wireless charging system I've come across lately. The phone doesn't really seem to slide around on it all that much, and yeah, it charges quite quickly. Lower console here, we've got a fair bit of piano black, which is already quite scratched in this car, and this car has done less than 5,000 kilometers, so that's just a little bit sad. But the gear shifter has a nice solid feel to it. We've got the sport mode selector here. That's the only available drive mode. It just really hangs onto the gears a bit longer. The jog wheel for the center console screen, which you'll need to be using a fair bit, I think. Under the slidey door, we've got a couple of good sized cup holders and a pretty small center console bin with 2 USB-A inputs, a 12-volt outlet, and an SD card reader for the car's native navigation. Head-up display on the windshield is really nice and bright. You can change the angle of it. It passes the polarized sunglasses test, which is a bit of a rare thing. The digital instrument cluster, well, it's a hybrid, it's analog and digital. I think it's been redesigned since the car that I had, but it actually looks pretty good. It's pretty much on par with other systems that you see in other Mazdas, although the newer Mazdas like the CX-60 and CX-90 do get all digital displays, but they actually look pretty similar to this. You can cycle through some trip information on the screen, but that's really about it. There's no integration with the navigation system, or at least the Apple CarPlay navigation, so you don't get turn turn-by-turn directions on the head-up display or in the instrument cluster, which is a bit of a shame. The steering wheel is a very nice Mazda unit. You find these across the range, and it has a really nice leather wrap and stitching. It feels really good. Some easy-to-use controls. We've got paddle shifters on the back. The seats are leather. They are ventilated and very comfortable. We've got full electric adjustment for the driver and front passenger with a bit of lumbar support. Seating position is just a touch higher than I'd like it to be. Just a little bit lower in the cabin would make it a little bit sportier, I think. But visibility out the front is pretty good. I can't quite see to the front corner of the bonnet, but you've got a fair idea of where it is. The rear vision mirrors could be just a touch bigger as well, but the center mirror here, really good visibility through there. Cabin kept relatively light and bright with this smallish sunroof here, but with the dark headliner, it can get a little bit dark in here. The back seat of the Mazda 6 is a very nice place to be if you're just a little bit shorter than I am. At 190 centimeters tall, I don't really have any headroom. My knees just touching the seat in front of me in my own seating position, but not really a deal breaker on a short trip. These seats though are very comfortable. This leather is really nice. We've got more of these nice wood inserts here on the rear doors that we have in the front as well. And we've got this armrest here with cup holders. The outboard seats here are heated and the controls for those are just here underneath this flap where you could maybe, I don't know, store your phone. There's 2 USB-A ports. And this whole unit here just feels kind of nice and premium. So all up, backseat of the Mazda 6, really good if you're just a little bit shorter than I am. It is very easy to do limousine style driving in this car. It is a very quiet, smooth and refined car to drive. I mean, this is approaching European levels of refinement. It's really good. Apart from the performance maybe not being quite as lively, dare I say it, this is almost like driving an Audi. The steering is actually quite heavy, maybe even just a little bit too heavy for some people. The only time you really hear the engine is when you put your foot down, you get up to those higher revs, and the 4-cylinder engine just doesn't really quite sound as ballsy as you would want it to for a car this size. It just sounds a bit like a Mazda 3. Driving dynamics are of course a very important thing to Mazda. Zoom Zoom is not just a marketing slogan, it is actually a philosophy that they live by, and their cars are fun to drive. And the Mazda 6 is no exception, although kind of lumbers along at low speed in a very smooth and refined way. But if you put your foot down, you can get pretty good performance out of this thing. Safety gear, you don't really lack anything in this car despite its age. We've got top-down 360-degree virtual camera, which is great for parking. We've got cameras at the front and back, adaptive cruise control, and blind spot monitors in the wing mirrors. I have a theory that Mazda are trying to slowly retire their old 1970s logo because I cannot find one on this car anywhere except on the compliance plate in the door sill. Other than that, it's nowhere to be found in the engine bay as far as I could see. It certainly isn't anywhere here on the cabin. It's not on any of the window glass. I mean, it is kind of old and daggy. Maybe it is time to move on. This car can be so quiet, in fact, that my son thought it was electric. But when you put your foot down, you can hear that engine note and it just, I don't know, it just doesn't sound big enough for a car this size. Okay, here we go, around a big bend. And this feels really nice and confident. I don't want to say we're staying flat, but I certainly don't feel like we're about to slide out anywhere. This is fun. One of the most interesting things for me driving this car is that, I mean, this is a pretty brand new example. It was built earlier this year. But it's like driving a car from a decade ago because car technology has moved on so much in the last 10 years. It's still good, it just feels a bit old. So that is the Mazda 6, an oldie but a goodie that still holds its own against its main rival, the Toyota Camry. Now, there is a rumour going around that this car is about to have a complete redesign and come back with rear-wheel drive and a 6-cylinder engine. My God, I hope that happens. But in the meantime, if you're looking for good, reliable family transport and you're not that much into SUVs, then the Mazda 6 could be a very good option for you.